Well, it all started back in September the 9th, 1942. I graduated from high school in May of that year. And I think it all started, my cousin and I went to a movie. It was a war movie and everything. And we came out of there so hopped up about patriotism, we couldn't wait to join up. And of course, I was underage, 17. My parents wouldn't hear of it. And Kenneth and I decided we would run off to Canada and enlist in the Canadian Air Force. But in order to do so, we needed money. So we had planned, back in those days, tires were at a premium. They were, well, you just couldn't get tires. So we had decided we would steal the tires off of our parents' cars, leave them high and dry, and we'd get to Canada with the money we got from stealing their tires. But that didn't happen. My dad finally consented to sign the papers for me. And we went to the Navy. And we took tests and everything. Well, I ended up going to Phil Medical School. And I finished that, I think it was a 6 weeks course, and was sent to Oakland Naval Hospital. And I was only there for, a matter of weeks. And I didn't like it. I wanted to go to sea, wanted to do something. So I put in for sea duty, knowing full well that 9 times out of 10, when you put in for sea duty, being a corpsman, you were transferred to the Marine Corps. Well, sure enough, I got transferred to the Marine Corps. And went to basic training down in San Diego. And after that, I went to Australia to join the 1st Marine Division. And spent 9 days there. Well, in the meantime, the 1st Marine Division had gone up to Guadalcanal. Of course, the fighting was over then. And they were up there training, so they sent me up to Guadalcanal to join the 1st Marine Division. And then from there, of course, their next assignment was Peleliu, which luckily I didn't get selected. I volunteered for that, but they didn't really need me. But it was a very bloody operation. But then after that, we went into Okinawa, and I was in with the Okinawan, first wave Okinawan invasion. And probably, I can't say that I was real brave about it. I probably was a little scared. And but then I went in, in the invasion and everything, and we made it through the first day, went all the way through the island the first day. And we caught the Japanese by surprise. They were expecting us over on the Pacific side. We went around and came in on the China Sea side. And we got all the way across the island the first day. Very few casualties, but then it sort of hit. And it was quite a procedure. And I guess, I did a lot of, taking care of the wounded, which was quite something to do. But one thing I did, one day we were back in rest area, and General Simon Bolivar Buckner, he was a 3-star general, came up to our outfit and just wanted to talk. So we sat around and talked. I guess we talked with him 15, 20 minutes. And then he wanted to go down on the front lines to see what was going on. And he asked one of the enlisted men if they would take him down on the front line. And unfortunately, General Butler kept his hat on with the big 3 or 4 stars, whatever he had, shining right on the front of his helmet. Well, he got a mortar shell. In fact, a mortar shell hit right in front of him and blew a big chunk of Karl into his chest and killed him. And I had I don't know if you call it privilege or honor or what, of carrying him, putting him on the medevac plane, flying him out of there. But he was the first, and I think the only 3 or 4-star general killed in World War II. But he was quite an individual, very likable person. And then, well, another thing I guess I can tell you that pretty exciting. I always liked the airplanes and flying and wasn't able to do it. And when we were being rested here, I'd go up on the flight strip. They just bulldozed the path out. And they had these little L5 Piper Cup type planes coming in. And I got to know the pilots. And so one day one of them said, "Porter, you want to go for a flight?" I said, "Sure." He said, "Well, grab that box over there and jump in the back seat of the plane. Let's take off." So as we were taking off, he said, "Do you know how to pray?" That should have been my first clue to open the door and jump out. But I said, "I sure do." He said, "I would recommend you start praying now." I said, "What are we going to do?" He said, "We're going to fly down over the Japanese lines, and that box you've got's full of surrender leaflets." Said, "We've never thrown out surrender leaflets to the Japanese before, but we're going to try it." And said, "When I nod my head, you're going to start throwing those out the window." So we would fly down over their lines and throw those leaflets out. And we did get shot. I had a bullet go all the way through the plane right behind me. Luckily, it wasn't a foot forward more. Would have been pretty drastic. But all in all, it was, being a corpsman with the Marines was quite a ordeal. In fact, the Marines valued us. They thought one corpsman was worth 32 Marines, because they figured that's about the number that we would save in one battle or something. So it was quite an experience, taking care of them. And I tell you, they took care of us. I mean, they took care of their corpsmen. And so, made it through the war, the Okinawan campaign with that, and very lucky. And then from there, I went to China, and went to China in October of '46, and stayed there until April of '47, I believe. No, I went there in '45 and stayed there till April of '46, and then came back to the States and was discharged. And stayed in the reserves, and then, of course, went to college and dental school, and got out of dental school in a private practice 5 years. But I wasn't satisfied. I still liked the military, so I sold my practice and went into the Air Force, and served 27 years then with the Air Force, and then retired for good. So, and that's about the extent of my military doings.
During the 27 years, what was that like?
I enjoyed it. I was a dentist, oral surgeon, and then I became the base dental surgeon. Spent, just running the clinics on the base. It was very enjoyable. I truly, truly loved the Air Force. It was a good, interesting career. And so all those 27 years, let's see, I started out in Sacramento, California. From Sacramento, I went to Allison Air Base in Fairbanks, Alaska. From Fairbanks, I went to Randolph in San Antonio, Texas. Spent 4 years there, and got a little antsy and wanted to go again, so applied for overseas duty and was sent to Germany. Spent 4 years in Germany, and then from there came back from Germany to, I guess, Tinker Air Force Base in Oklahoma. And in fact, that's where I met your grandma, and we got married. And so we then, from Tinker, we went to Germany together. You know, that's where Germany came in. So we spent 4 years over there, and then I retired from over there. So 27 years, so I figured that was enough. But I tell you, I truly enjoyed my military career. I really did. The people we ran into in Spain, Germany, Italy, they seemed to admire our military. And of course, they all loved America and wanted to get to America first chance they got. But they seemed to respect the American military. So we had a good relationship with them.
And now, you went to Germany,
Yeah,
of course, after World War II.
yeah.
What was the climate like in Germany towards America?
It was, I would say, very good. In some cases, there's probably a little jealousy. I guess the best word I can come up with. They admired us. Of course, we saved their behooties. And so we had a good relationship with the people over there.
And when you say we saved him, Hitler was from Germany.
Yeah, but
Populists did not agree with him.
no, they didn't. Majority of the Germans did not agree with Hitler. You know, he just went over by force, and they did what he did, or, you know, he eliminated them. Now, the majority of the Germans that we met did not care for Hitler at all. And so they were, I think, more than happy for the U.S. to come in and liberate them from Hitler.
Do you know of any other countries that may seem like they're in a similar situation where the populists may not seem to go along with their leadership?
Of course, Italy, you know, Mussolini was the dictator down there. And, you know, Mussolini and Hitler, they cracked a hard whip. They just, you either went by what they said or else you didn't stick around long. So the people in Italy were glad to see us too. Yeah, we had a good relationship, and I would think France, I think France has always been a little jealous of the U.S. And but we got along okay there. But you could tell they weren't in love with us.
Of course, you know, all the women would be called Fraulein right now.
Yeah.
It wasn't for America.
No, I'm sure there's a lot of French people that did like us. But of course, you know, de Gaulle and all that bunch, he got to be, as far as I was concerned, de Gaulle was almost as much of a dictator as Hitler and Mussolini, and he pretty well cracked the whip there. So they probably wouldn't like to hear me say that, but we had a good relationship with the people over there.
It was a patriotic movie that inspired people to take action. What about that movie? Can you remember the name of that movie?
No, I sure can. I know it was a wartime movie. I think it's the Army involved in it with all their bravado and the fighting and the heroes coming home and everything. And just my cousin and I went to see that, and we couldn't wait to join up.
Right.
I mean, we were really ready to go. And
Now, Hitler thought that American men were too busy chasing girls and racing their cars to fight in a war. He was proven wrong.
I think he got fooled. Yeah. We had some good, what do you want to call them, statisticians or whatever, General Bradley and Eisenhower and MacArthur. We had some brilliant generals at that time. And they had it pretty well figured out how to take care of those guys.
You admire those generals. What are some things that you remember from them that made them brilliant to you, besides their strategy in war?
I really don't know that I can come up with anything like that. Like I said, the only thing is the brilliancy of them, planning, invasions or certain things like that. But I tell you what, they came up with some pretty good ideas on how to invade Germany and Italy and France and those areas. And then, of course, after we just about had Germany whipped, and the Russians decided they would join us. So they came in from the north. We already had the war won, but they wanted a piece of the pie too, so they got credit for, some of it. But,
what was the biggest, if any, misconceptions you had going in that you learned differently or not?
Well, probably the only thing I faulted the military for, I thought that I should have been promoted general, pretty quick with my brilliancy and everything. No, I'm kidding. I really don't know of any misconceptions that I really had.
So there's a great sense of pride in America.
Oh yeah, very much so. And like I said, when I, was a medical corpsman, and the Navy supplied the Marines with their medical personnel, and I was transferred to the Marines, knowing your chances of surviving were pretty slim, but I was proud to be a Marine. It's a good outfit.
Once a Marine, always a Marine.
Yeah, it's a fantastic outfit.
There are plenty of people who are discouraged right now, especially among the military. What are your thoughts? What do you think America needs for the military and for the citizens?
One thing, they're not hard enough on the troops. The training is not as hard. I tell you, we used to, with the Marines, we went through some almost real life experiences in training with that outfit. And, but I'd say, all the services back then, pride was a big thing. You really appreciated your outfit. And nowadays, of course, guys having to go in, they're drafted and everything, and they just don't have that pride. They don't really, they're in there just to serve their time and get out. But back then, volunteered, and you knew what you were getting into and what you wanted to do.
Can you remember any details about your basic training that were impressionable?
I remember, excuse me, we had what we call the grinder. It was the drill field, but it was solid concrete. These huge areas, just all concrete. And we'd be out there in the hot summertime, boiling hot, and be out there most of the day. And I've been in formation, and the guy next to me pass out, just flop, and you can't do anything. You're not allowed to bend over and help him. You have to wait for the medical personnel to come take care of him. The poor guy's laying there, head busted open on the concrete, and it was terrible out on those, like I said, we call them grinders. But in the hot summertime, and we'd be out there for hours and hours and hours, drilling and everything in that stuff. And but then my Marine training, I went down to Camp Elliott, the Marine base down there, for my, I guess, first 6 weeks. And then went up to Camp Pendleton, which had just opened. It was a huge, it may still be the biggest Marine base in the country, the world. And we sort of got in on the ground floor, and we had the privilege of digging slit trenches and all kinds of things like that. But one thing we did, we had those slit trenches, and a couple of us didn't really care to do all that kind of work all the time, so we would get in, we'd check out, they'd check us in the morning, call our names, and here, and then we'd go over and get our shovels or picks, whatever we were supposed to use that day, and go over to the job they told us to, and then we'd slip down in one of those ditches and sneak out of there and go back to the barracks and hide out most of the day there. And I don't know how many weeks my outfit was assigned to that. We were out there in the field doing that. And I think I may have worked 1.5 days. Because we sneaked, if they'd caught us, oh, mercy. I don't know what they would have done. But it was an adventure. Marine training was very, very intense, and it was hard, very hard. But it was, you were associating with men, real men. And I'll tell you what, those old Marine gunny sergeants, you talk about mean, they were, I don't think their mother would even like them. I've seen them, we'd be in, lines, attention, up there, just, and maybe a guy would not have his stomach pulled back right. They'd come up there to the butt of that rifle, bang, hit him in the gut and knock him 3 rows back. And you didn't write home and tell mother about it either, like they do nowadays.
Oh yeah.
But it was a rough training.
But they broke you down, and then they built you back up as a unit.
I tell you, when I finished that Marine training, I was probably as solid as I've ever been. I don't think there was a bit of fat on me or anything. But
what were the exercises like?
We'd have some exercise had under actual fire, and that made you stay on your belly close to the ground. We'd be crawling, infiltrating, and they'd be firing just, I don't know, right over your head. So you didn't want to raise your head up or anything. You stayed on your belly and crawled to the wherever it was you were going, because they were shooting real ammo right over your head.
Wishing by.
So that was sort of scary. But,
how about the combat training?
it was rough. They had us ready, yeah. They really had us ready. And, being a medic, medic's supposed to wear the band with a red cross on it and a red cross on your helmet. And not with the Japanese. You did not. They told us that you take that armband and use that for a shine cloth or something, but you don't put it on your arm, because the Japanese would love to see someone with that, because they would go for them very first thing. And well, like I said, the Japanese considered one medic worth 32 Marines. And and medical personnel really was not supposed to carry weapons or anything. I carried, I think, 3 hand grenades, a carbine, and a .45. And I did trade my .45 to a pilot for his .38. It was lighter, and I could hit with it better. But no, like I said, the medics weren't supposed to carry any weapons, but we all did. And we learned to use them. It was quite an experience.
So what was the moment like when you had a rite of passage, you finished basic training? What was that like to know that you completed that training and you were officially a Marine?
You were pretty proud of yourself. And but then knowing too that you were getting ready to go overseas in the middle of it. And but that's what we were in there for. And I tell you, when we finished our Marine training, we were ready to do whatever we were called upon to do.
How did they prepare you mentally?
Just kept telling you the best. You're the best. And we were. We were. I tell you, some of those old Marines, I've just never seen anything like it. They're just mean. I mean, mean. They were. We were in basic training, and one night we were in our barracks, and we had these big, regular old picnic type tables with the seats built in. And our old first sergeant, gunny sergeant, came in, and he was mean. He was so bad that if another outfit was having trouble with their troops, they would call him over and swap their first sergeants, and they'd send theirs over to ours, and he'd go over there and spend a day or two with them, and they'd straighten up. He was mean. He got up on the barracks, up on the table, one of the first nights there, and he said, "I'm Sergeant so-and-so." He said, "I'm the meanest SOB in the Marine Corps." He didn't use the initials. And he said, "If any of you doubt it," he said, "just come to me and we'll go down the boondocks, and only one of us is coming back, and I guarantee it's going to be me." And he was that mean. No one ever just tried him. No one ever tried him. But he was something else. But he sure shaped us into good Marines.
Sometimes I hear people going through basic training, and sometimes those drill sergeants are so mean, they're funny. And you're trying not to laugh, because you laugh, you're in trouble.
Oh, you are in trouble.
Did you ever have moments like that where they were so mean they were funny?
No, I probably wanted to cry more than I wanted to laugh. No, it wasn't funny.
Wow.
But I wish I could think of his name. I almost can. I didn't think I'd ever forget it. But he was unreal.
It's been said that in a moment of crisis, you always revert back to your training. Did you have moments where you knew that your training was kicking in automatically?
You betcha. You were glad that you went through that. At the time, you think, this is not necessary, all this stuff. And why are we having to do it? But you get in actual combat, and you're glad that they taught you that stuff. And you see now why they taught it to you. And just about all of it came in handy at one time or the other.
Some people have said that it's harder for the generation that went through World War II to talk about the war. Or maybe not harder, maybe they just prefer not to talk about it as much as latter wars. Do you see that?
I didn't talk about it until not too many years ago. My kids, would keep asking me about things. And I know a lot of guys just probably never did talk about it. And I didn't care to talk about it. And then, of course, my kids got older. Dad, what did you do? And, tell us different things. So then I started opening up a little bit. But it's not something you just go around broadcasting and everything. But,
you did tell a story one time, a short little story about being in China, catching a train or something.
Oh, I was down. We went into tents in China with my outfit, and we were only there a very short while. And we got orders to go up to a place called Patio Beach, which was right up on the Manchurian border. Well, I had been scheduled. I had back then you came back to the States according to the number of points you accumulated. You'd accumulate a point for every month or, things like that. And I had way more points than I needed, but they still sent me on to China. Well, I got there and they left me down in Tencent. The rest of them went on up to Patio Beach because they said, well, you're going to be going back to the States, any day now. Well, it didn't happen. So I got a message. I think I've still got that. A radio message ordering me up to join the outfit up in Patio Beach. So I got on this Chinese train, the only American on the train. Didn't speak Chinese. One thing about it was cold as the devil when we were doing it, and I didn't have any winter clothing. I had just summer outfit, and I was freezing to death on that train. And I took my helmet liner out and just took my metal helmet, and you couldn't find anything, any wood in China. I mean, Brian, you could find telephone poles. Every other telephone pole, half of it would be gone. Top would be hanging by the wires. Then there'd be a pole. The next one, half of it gone. Wood was so scarce. Wow. You could not find a sliver of wood any place. You'd dig around. Well, I got off that train and I dug around one day and I got some little pieces of cardboard and a few little pieces of wood. And I built me a fire in my helmet there, and I had my feet propped up on the seat across from me, and I took my blanket and put over me. I was sitting there getting pretty cool, and this Chinese officer came down through the train. He started, I said, yeah. I said, yeah. Got a fire here, cool on. He just finally shook his head and walked on. But it's the only way I could stay warm. But I made it up there. We got, we had to go through the Chinese communists were ruling the upper part of China at the time. And so as we were going on the train, they were shooting at us. And they were just blasting away. They were coming through, and I found my place down on the floor of the train pretty good. But made it through there and got on up to Patio Beach. And like so, it was so bad, I wasn't up there hardly any time at all, and I got orders to go back by myself.
Wow. Was it better this time around?
Yeah, it was better going back, yeah. But,
warmer clothes?
Yes, I did. and we didn't get shot at as much. But it was quite an experience.
Then talk about the brotherhood that you experienced, especially times of war. What would you have to say about the brotherhood within?
Branch, you tried not to get close to anyone, because chances were they were going to get killed or something, and you just tried not to get close to anyone. I did end up getting close to a little Mexican kid from Florida. And we got to be real buddies, and he ended up with the Rangers. And one day someone came to me and told me that he'd been killed. Well, it just really tore me up, because we were pretty good buddies. And I guess, I don't know, a week or two later, one day he came walking up. They said I turned as white as that divan, probably. I was in, like that. But he was in the Rangers, and he had gotten captured. He escaped and made his way back to our outfit. And, but like I said, you just didn't really try to get close to anybody. It was just like that. If they get killed or you think they did, it hurts. So, I made friends, and a few of them we corresponded after the war, and eventually just lost track. But just didn't get close to too many of them.
Right. Would you hear updates about what was happening with the enemy and of course the American forces? Would they show films from time to time?
No, we didn't have any films back then. They were just word of mouth. That such outfits pinned down up there. One night, we got word that some outfit was pinned down and needed some corpsmen up there, so I went up and taken care of wounded. And I got this one guy, he had a massive axilla wound. I mean, just bleeding, and no way I could put a tourniquet any place, stop it. So the only thing I could do is take a big battle dressing, put on my fist, and just ram my fist in his axilla and hold his arm down. And then I grabbed the first, it was an Amtrak came by, they were going back down. So I grabbed it and got him on there and got him out of there. But it's, stuff like that. Gee.
How many men do you think you had the privilege of helping save?
Oh, golly.
Died had you not helped them?
I have no idea. No idea.
If you did have an idea, would you say?
No, because I just don't have any idea. You just don't keep track of that stuff. And but I tell you, it can hurt you. Like this one guy I was taking care of one day, the whole back of his head blown off. And the only thing I'd do to him is take big battle dressings and just pull on the back of his head. And he asked me if I could get his billfold out. And I'm going to choke up.
Okay.
Asked me if I could get a picture of his daughter out, show it to him, which I did. But things like that, they just get to you. And luckily with him, well, like I said, the whole back of his head blown off, but things like that, a lot of times I'd check back, if they got back to the medevac, and if they got out on the hospital ships, and last I heard, he was out on the hospital ship and still alive, so I figured, okay. But it gets you, like that, when you figure really they're going to die, and they ask you to get the picture of their daughter out, and it hurts, but that's war.
So, what are some things that you see in America right now? What are some of your observations?
Well, we're not patriotic. And I think we have very, very few guys or gals nowadays that are willing to die for their country. Because when I left home, I did not think I'd come back. I hadn't planned on it. Told Dad I wouldn't be back. But nowadays, I don't think you have that patriotism. You may have, a few, but all in all, it's not like it used to be.
What would you say to young men who are searching for identity, and they've been immersed in this anti-patriotic, weak culture? What would you say to them? What would you encourage them to do or to be?
I would recommend really they join one of the branches of service, and I think that's the only way they can turn their life around. They may not want to do that, wouldn't care to do it, but I think if they would do it, they would be changed men. And because I don't think you can get into the military and go through that training and everything they teach you and not be patriotic. It's got to rub off on you. And of course, I'm sure there's some that go through it, or a lot of them that don't make it through it and get court-martialed or kicked out before they finish their training. But I think it's good. If I had a son, I would want him to put in his 3 or 4 years at least.
What would you say to Americans in general about this threat of Islam? What would your recommendations be?
I would like to see us put some boots on the ground and go over there. If we need to go into Syria, where we need to go get them, get them.
What about the ones that are radicalized here? I say they're fundamental.
Yeah.
But
well, first of all, I wouldn't have anything to do with them, and wouldn't have any use for them.
Did you encounter any Muslims during World War II?
No, I don't even think we had any back then that we knew of.
There's some that collaborated with Hitler.
Yeah, but I didn't see any of them. But like I said, I was in the Pacific Theater, and the Pacific Theater and the European Theater were two totally different wars. Totally different. Of course, over there, it was strictly ground fighting, and Pacific, it was island hopping from island to island and things of that sort.
What would be your hope for America now?
Well, I hope for one thing that we would turn our country around. I think we need to get tougher with people, and because they don't abide by laws anymore. They just do whatever they want to do, and I think we're too lenient, really, on people. Of course, that's me.
Was there a certain rally cry, a certain saying that the men knew or would say on the battlefront? Was there a theme that you would hear?
No, unless it was get that SOP or something like it.
It was so ingrained in your training.
Yeah. No, I never did hear any yelling or anything. Just the guys there to do their job, and they did it.
They say the most powerful warriors are those who are willing to die.
Yeah. Brent, we had a guy that ended up in my outfit, young guy. He got wounded, got him back to the field hospital, treated him. He slipped out of there, went back and joined his outfit, got wounded again, came back in the hospital, slipped out of there again. He ended up getting wounded 5 times before they finally just practically set on him and said, "You're going home," you know. But he was, you talk about gung-ho, he was, but I couldn't believe it. I just kept getting shot up and going back for more.
And what was it? What was it in him that had him do that?
I think it's stupidity. I really, you know, I don't know if you'd call that patriotism or like I said, stupidity.
Or crazy.
Yeah. Or just, you know, didn't put any value on his life or something. I just, you'd have to be sort of nuts, I think. Or life didn't mean anything to him. Maybe he'd fallen out with his girlfriend back home or something. I don't know. So.
Well, to put a bow on this has been fantastic. It's an honor to hear this, and I'm very fond of what is described as the greatest generation. My desire is for all Americans to be mindful of the prices that have been paid. And so, if you had one thing to say to Americans in general about how great America really is, what would you say?
I would say, you know, in spite of the way it is nowadays and what we're going through, in a lot of cases, it's not something we'd really be too proud of. Not like it used to be. But still, it's our country, and I think, you know, we should be proud of it. We should be willing to fight for it. And it's the greatest country on earth. So why not be ready to fight for it? And I think there are, luckily, a lot of guys like that out there who feel like the way I do.
Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome.